हे प्रभु जी, प्रभु जी, प्रभु जी, दया करो मन में आन बसो, मन में आन बसो।
Welcome to Satsang. Thank you for the beautiful, beautiful music. Such a beautiful way to start. Sura jisko aage badha. Isko badhata ho. Badha do iska. Beginning with sacred chanting is such a blessing, such a gift that just opens our hearts in such a way. Thank you. Really, really so beautiful. So beginning with a question that came in advance. We usually begin with a question that comes in advance via email or social media or however it comes from our global family. And then we open it up to any questions that anyone here might have. So we begin with, is it possible for your karma to oppose your dharma? Can your karma actually prevent you from realizing and fulfilling your purpose? Absolutely. Not forever. But this is why we speak about birth and death and reincarnation and the whole cycle of karma. So karma is action. Can we act out of alignment with our dharma? Absolutely. We've been given free will. We're not all quite so blessed to find ourselves literally face to face with God in the form of our charioteer speaking to us very loudly and clearly, like Arjun got in the Bhagavad Gita, to dispel his confusion. We have our inner voice, that inner way of knowing. We have scripture, we have gurus and mentors. We have a lot of ways to find the right path. But we have full freedom not to follow it. We have full freedom to do whatever we would like. But whatever we do has a repercussion. The seeds we plant become trees. The fruit of those trees is what we end up eating in our life. That's why we speak about karmic fruit. So people talk sometimes about, oh, it's my bad karma or good karma. And that's not exactly right. Karma is just what I've done. Karma is the action. The karmic fruit is that which comes back to me. And so if I'm acting out of alignment with Dharma, both universal Dharma or my own personal Dharma, I'm going to get fruits of that ultimately, eventually, are actually going to make me go closer and closer to Dharma. So here's what it looks like. We've got two types of Dharma. One is what we call universal Dharma. And that's at the highest level. All of our highest purpose, our highest Dharma, is to recognize the divine within ourselves. To experience that presence of the self as divine. Then we have what you can think of as individual dharmas. In the same way that Arjun's individual dharma at that time was to fight the war, hence the Bhagavad Gita. Now he'd had different dharmas at different times of his life in the same way that we have different dharmas at different times in our life. But we all have individual dharmas, meaning that which each of us is meant to bring to expression here on earth. We've got different skills, different abilities, different opportunities, different situations, different backgrounds, different life experiences. And all of those are given to us for a reason, which is each of us is manifesting something different here. Neither is better or worse, higher or lower. It's just different. Now, for example, let's say you have a child whose individual dharma is to be an artist. He's a brilliant painter or a brilliant musician. But every other member of his family, immediate family, extended family, everybody is an engineer, right? So his father says, or his mother says, this art stuff, this music stuff, fine, do it on the weekends, I don't care. But you are going to be an engineer. Now the kid hates math, he's not good at math, he's failing math. Every day is a struggle, but nonetheless, what he's told is, you must be an engineer. Now sometimes it's direct, sometimes it's really a parent saying, you must do this. Or a culture saying, you must do this. Live in a certain way, make money in a certain way, love in a certain way. And sometimes it's just an internal sense. Sometimes no one needs to actually say anything, but we look around and we say, oh my God, everybody's an engineer. I guess I'm also supposed to be one. We look around and we say, all right, everybody is living like that. All right, I guess I'm also supposed to do it. Now, when that child eventually does become an engineer, because most of us are pretty obedient to that which we get directly and indirectly. Now that child becomes an engineer, but he's miserable. Every day he's miserable. He hates it. Hates his job. And on a deep level, what he knows is that he has a gift that he's not offering to the world. This is a boy, or now a boy become a man, whose karma, whose actions have taken him out of alignment with his dharma. His dharma is to make music, make art. And then here's what happens. Eventually, most of us eventually come back onto the path, whether due to our own misery or whether due to maybe we've acted out of dharma in a way that really is more along right or wrong. So maybe we've acted against universal dharma of honesty, compassion, integrity, truthfulness. This is all universal dharma. We take our 10 commandments. We take yam and niyam. Take the teachings of the scriptures. This is universal dharma. It applies to everyone. Maybe I act out of that. I lie, I cheat, I steal, I harm. That karma is out of alignment with dharma. It is going to bring me suffering. The fruit of that karma is going to be bitter. Now, when I get that bitter fruit, not because it's a punishment, it's not the universe punishing me, it's just the natural fruit of what I've planted. That moment gives me an opportunity to again question what I may have done to end up in this particular situation, to learn my lesson, to act differently. Or maybe I don't. Maybe I don't take the lesson. We all know people like that. And I keep doing it. And then I keep having bitter fruit. Okay. Well, some of us never learn it in this lifetime. All right. You'll learn it in next lifetime. You can come back. The universe is infinitely patient, however long it takes you to learn it. But one thing is sure, which is as long as we are acting out of alignment with dharma, both universal dharma and our individual dharma, we will be suffering. And so eventually, that suffering, this lifetime, next lifetime, eventually that suffering is going to lead us onto a path of dharma. Eventually. And this is where we're given the opportunity now to say, okay, I know what dharma is. Why would I act out of alignment with it? When I know that at the end of the day, I'm just going to suffer and have to do it. You know, it's like kids who refuse to do their homework, refuse to study for exams, and end up getting held back from going on to the next grade in school. Okay, so they do 5th grade all over again. Well, the school will let you do 5th grade as many times as you need to, until you can pass the exams that are necessary to go into 6th grade. But at some point, that child is going to realize that all those video games, all that goofing around, is actually causing him or her to just get held back year after year. Their friends make fun of them. They're the oldest kid in the class. Now they feel embarrassed. And so eventually they study, and eventually they go on to the next grade. It's the same thing for us. The question is why? Why not now already start acting in alignment with Dharma? When we know eventually. You know, when I first came, Pujya Swamiji gave me a beautiful sutra. The sutra was, engage yourself in karma under the shade of Dharma with an awareness of Brahma. And it was just this beautiful life sutra. So engage yourself in karma. Well, we're all engaged in action anyway. But what he meant was karma yoga, meaning action that is rooted in an awareness of oneness, yoga, or action that is leading you to greater and greater experience of oneness, of union. Under the shade of Dharma, because Dharma is that which protects us. It is said that by protecting the Dharma protects us. So we live under that shade of Dharma, universal and individual, with an awareness of God, meaning wherever you go, whatever you do, that God is there. And we recognize that. We live with that experience of God's presence wherever we are, whatever we do. And it's so simple, but so powerful. And it gave me 25 years ago, with really no knowledge about the scriptures or the religion or the culture at all. It gave me just a beautiful path to walk. But it's one that I've never outgrown. Even today, it's just a beautiful sutra for life, just remembering all of your actions. Can everything we do be karma yoga? Can every action be rooted in union? And can it all be under a shade of Dharma with an awareness of God? Simple. And so deeply powerful. Does anyone here have a question? Yes.
आपके जैसे क्यूट स्माइल करने के लिए क्या करना चाहिए?
क्या करना चाहिए रेगुलरली? अच्छा, खुशी रहने के लिए, खुश रहने के लिए. देखो, हमारे खुशी जो है, the question was how to stay happy all the time. अपनी खुशी अपने हाथ में है. खुशी का सूत्र केवल इतनी है कि बाहर से, किसी से ना कुछ एक्सपेक्ट करो, ना कुछ मांगो. या अगर मांगेंगे तो कोई बात नहीं, लेकिन कोई एक्सपेक्टेशन नहीं है कि वो देंगे या करेंगे. जब तक मेरी खुशी is stuck with someone else's actions, someone else's choices, someone else's words, though I will be unhappy. What I just told him in Hindi was, we'll go back and forth in English and Hindi a bit here, was that our happiness is in our hands. And the best sutra for happiness is not to expect anything from someone else, that if they don't do it, I become unhappy. To not hook my happiness into someone else's actions, someone else's words, someone else's choices. Because then I've taken the most precious thing, my joy, my freedom to be joyous, and I've hooked it into someone else's karmic drama. When they are acting the way I want them to, I'm happy. When they're not, I'm not. Dancing according to my tune, I'm happy. Not, I'm not. Well, it's a recipe for disaster and a recipe for misery, because we're all stuck in our karmic dramas, and while we would love to think that our greatest motivating factor is keeping everyone around us happy? Ultimately, most of our greatest motivating factor is our own karmic drama. And so, if in order to be happy you need someone else to be a certain way, whether it's a loved one, whether it's an employer or an employee, whether it's God, right? I mean, whoever, whatever it may be that you are needing to give you something. Because for so many of us, the happiness we get from God isn't, oh, thank you for being in my life. But, oh, thank you so much for having my son pass that exam that he didn't study for. Thank you so much for having me be the one to get this or get that. So we need to unhook our happiness. And it's very, very challenging. It's not easy. It's simple but not easy. स्वयं से पूछना है कि मेरा भीतर का जो हैप्पीनेस फैक्ट्री है इसको मैं कैसे ऑन करूं? Because each of us has that ability to turn on our own internal happiness machine. We know. We've all had experiences of being all alone. No one is there. No input from the world. Days before social media, or maybe your phone is off. Nonetheless, you're able to be happy. We don't need someone to say something or do something for us to feel happy. So many of us experience it in nature, in the forest with the trees, on the banks of Ganga. Being with yourself, taking a walk, listening to music, meditating, doing yoga. We have so many experiences of happiness that don't require another person. So it's beautiful to be in relationship, to make others happy, to have others make you happy. Wonderful. But just make sure that when they're not acting according to what you want, that your happiness doesn't disappear. Because otherwise you are forever at the mercy of someone else's drama. So the way to stay happy is internally. That whatever's going on outside, most of us अपनी स्वस्थिति जो है, परिस्थिति हिसाब से है. जैसे परिस्थिति है, वैसे अपनी स्वस्थिति है. ये गलत बात है. परिस्थिति chaos में, तो फिर हम chaos में. परिस्थिति शांत है, तो हम शांत है. That's the dilemma. Most of us, I was saying, our internal world is based on what's happening in the outer world. There's chaos in the outer world, we are chaotic inside. Peace and happiness in the outer world, we are peaceful and happy inside. But that's not how it should go. We should have access to joy and peace inside, because that's the nature of who we are. The nature of the soul, of the spirit, of the divine inside of us is peaceful, is joyful, is love. And we just have to access that so that we have that freedom. And that's the only real sutra for happiness, because otherwise, as the rest of the world keeps changing, so does our mood keep changing. So the less we hook our mood into the outer world, the happier we are. Then wherever you go, you can be happy. It's a beautiful day. People are doing what you want. Wonderful. It's not a beautiful day. It's a rainy day or a snowy day or something that you don't think is beautiful. And no one is doing what you want them to do. Still, you can be happy. Because that source of happiness is in you. But for that, we need to also have a connection to that source. That's why we meditate. To connect with that source. Yes. वो माइक पहुंच जाएगा आपके पास.
Negative thinking creates stress. How to control negative thinking?
Negative thinking is based on habit. We think negatively because we have the habit of thinking negatively. And that habit arises from two places. One, our childhood, jo sanskar milte humko. It forms us. If we are brought up in a family, in a home, where our parents were always negative, whatever we did, it was never good enough. Nothing was ever good enough. Everyone was negative. Everyone was pessimistic. Those are the habits, the sanskaras that we will grow with. The other way that we get it is actually from our association, our friends, people we hang out with. If you surround yourself with people who are always negative, in the beginning it'll really annoy you. But if you overcome that annoyance and you keep hanging out with negative people, eventually you'll become negative. And so the way to overcome it, first of all, is simply to recognize it, to realize that which is negative is not outside, it's inside. It's the old glass is half empty or glass is half full situation. There's always at least two ways, usually many ways, to think about every single situation. How we think about it is based on our habits of thought, but we have the power to change our habits. Like we have the power to quit smoking, quit drinking alcohol, quit biting our fingernails or cracking our knuckles or doing all sorts of other things that we have habits of doing. In the same way, we have the power to change the habit of our thoughts. But it requires awareness. And so this is where we need to be aware of our thoughts. Meditation is a beautiful practice. And there's a lot of ways. One really simple cognitive behavioral therapy type of technique that I love is get a rubber band and stick it on your wrist. Just a little rubber band. And every time you have a negative thought, flick that rubber band on your wrist. It hurts. This part of the wrist is very, very sensitive. The skin is really sensitive. You pull it back enough, you flick it. You're not going to cause any kind of permanent damage. I'm not saying, make knife wounds. Just you flick the rubber band. But you have to do it immediately, not 5 minutes later. It has to happen immediately. And what'll happen very quickly, in a matter of just a few days, the moment a negative thought starts to come, the brain automatically will stop it because it knows कि अब दर्द आने लगे. It knows I'm just about to be in pain. And so there's these very simple ways actually to change habits. Whatever habit you're trying to change. And it's a great one. It's an easy one. Just every time you're aware, just do it. But then, of course, with thoughts, we also have the power during our meditation of developing the skill of watching them. And you see them arise. And you see them arise, and you just notice them. And it's so humiliating. Because the truth is, most of our minds are in much worse shape than we realize. We may know, yeah, I've got a tendency toward negativity. But most of us have no idea really how bad it is in our own minds until you actually stop and you start watching them. But something very interesting happens. The more you watch it, the more it changes. The simple act of watching the mind actually causes the mind to change. I say this from personal experience. If I simply turn my awareness to looking at the mind, in my inner visual world, it's literally looking up. Like I literally turn the inner eye, the inner gaze, the inner attention up into my brain. And I start watching. And I do this if my mind feels like it's jumping all over the place. And I do it with no attachment, no agenda. I'm not trying to change the thoughts. I'm not analyzing them. I'm just going to become aware of them. Not even just as they arise, but actually aware of the entire mechanism of the brain. Because one way of doing it, which I do when the mind is not so all over the place, is you meditate. The awareness is on the breath, maybe on a mantra as well. And then periodically a thought will arise. And you simply allow the awareness to come back to the breath, back to the mantra. And then a few moments later, another thought will arise, and again you draw the awareness back. But at times where my mind feels like it's all over the place, I literally shift the gaze, and again, for me it's up, but it doesn't have to be up, however it feels right to you. And I look at my mind doing its thing. And if it's jumping, I just allow it to jump, but I'm watching fully that jumpingness. And for the first few moments, yeah, there's this frenetic energy in the mind. And then very, very, very quickly, simply by being watched, it calms down. It's like if you've ever seen a child throwing a temper tantrum. If you pick up that child, if you scold the child, it just gets worse. But if you pick up the child and you hold the child very, very tightly in your arms, assuming, of course, you're a loved one, a parent, a close loved one, not recommending this with random children you see on the street, and you hold the child very close. For a few moments, the child will flail all over the place. And then very, very quickly, the child will calm down into your arms. And so the mind is the same. So I would recommend both tactics. For the actual negative thoughts, do the rubber band. Every time you have one, just snap it. You'll see how quickly your mind will stop coming up with negative thoughts. But then on a deeper level, to gain that absolute mastery, you can say, of the mind in general, dive into these practices of really watching it. Really watching it. And see how it changes just under your attentive gaze. And it becomes a beautiful technique. I use it all the time. Yeah. Yes. Pale Sandeepji, inko de dijiyega. फिर आपके पीछे.
How to keep attachment separate from love? Like it could be love between spouse, sibling, friends, or your own daughter or son. How to keep it separate?
Love and attachments. Well, love and attachments are separate. The love we have, if it's real love, is love of their essence. Okay? I may also love your body, love to see you, love to hold your hand, love to talk to you. I could appreciate your beauty. But ultimately, love isn't of your body. That's lust. Love is of the soul, of the essence. So love is independent of what the body looks like, which is why we love our loved ones just as much when they wake up in the morning as we do when they've made themselves all up to look nice. Because it's not the body. We love them just as much when they're sick and, swollen and drippy and running and looking horrible, because it's their essence we love, not their face. So love is of the essence, not what they're saying or doing or looking like, not how they're acting. Attachment is my own ego issues. And it arises in a variety of ways. Number one, I need you as my child to act in a certain way because otherwise I look bad. Log kya sochenge? Right? Our children need to behave not because it's good for them, but because otherwise I'm embarrassed in front of people that my kids don't behave. Or I need you to speak to me in a certain way because when you don't, I don't feel worthy, loved, enough. I need your constant showering of love, of praise, of respect, because otherwise I don't feel whole and complete. Now that's my problem. That's not something I should dump on a loved one. Yes, obviously it's wonderful when people treat us with love and respect and feels great. But attachment arises when I need it. When you're not doing it, I no longer have access to my love for you. That my need of what you provide me starts to trump my actual love of your essence. And that's when relationships are in trouble. Because then it becomes much more a contract than a loving relationship. Then it's more of, a mutually beneficial sort of agreement we've got going. I'll put dinner on the table, you talk nicely to me. That's just a contract. That's not love. Love is there regardless. And so what's important with attachment is to ask yourself, what is it that feels so lacking in me that I need someone else to act in a certain way, speak in a certain way, treat me in a certain way in order for me to feel whole and enough? And then get yourself in therapy. Or start doing more spiritual practice. Because that's not the job of your loved one. That's the job between you and your therapist. Or you and your guru. Or you and yourself. But it's not the job of anyone we have a relationship with to make us feel whole and complete and worthy and lovable. So if you can unhook that attachment, then you're able to really love. And sometimes the attachment takes the form of us thinking we really know what's best for the other person. Like someone's acting in a way that we really believe is wrong. And so we do our best to try to get them to act in a different way. Now it arises out of love. But then it becomes an attachment to us believing that we are right. And the truth is, until and unless you can see the full many lifetimes tapestry of someone else's karmic cycle, you have no idea what's good for them. We may be able to think what's good for them in a particular intersection of time and space with kind of blinders on. But we have no idea where their karmic journey is taking them. And we have to allow each other the autonomy, the agency to fulfill our own karmic paths. So work out your attachments on your own so that you can be in relationship just in love. Yes, wonderful. And we'll end with this tonight and take the rest tomorrow.
So we just discussed that a child might want to be a musician or an artist, right? But as a teenager, we are confused all the time. So today our child might want to be a pilot. The other day might want to be a doctor or an artist. So as a parent, how do we know like what my child wants to do is actually his karma or dharma? So that is my question number one. And question two is like, if we start unhooking from people, expectations, situations, can it not lead to isolation, like in the family or in the...
So as far as our children, he said, how do we know what is our child's karma or dharma? We can't. But we can trust the child. God speaks through all. As parents, we have to get over ourselves. There's a responsibility, of course, to keep our child safe so babies reach toward a candle flame. Obviously, it's our responsibility to move their hand away, no matter how drawn they are to the candle or to the ledge of the balcony. Because, wow, it looks so beautiful. It's our responsibility to pull them back because they don't have all of their cognitive functioning. It's also why we don't let very young children, vote, get married, make decisions that are going to be those that have huge impacts on them and others for a very long time. But God speaks through all. And so the best thing you can do for your child is to teach your child to trust themselves. Teach them to hear God's voice. If they say, I want to paint, if you've got a boy and he says, I want to paint, don't say, no you don't, you want to play football instead. Let him paint. If he says, I want to do ballet, don't say, no, you don't. Boys don't do ballet. Boys play football. Trust him. If he says, he's drawn in a certain way, let him explore. Let them explore in nature. Let them explore in life, safely, obviously, not unsupervised. Give them freedom. As parents, we're constantly, don't do this, don't do that, don't. Well, keep them safe. But don't put them on leashes that are 2 inches long, and especially over their brains. And then as they grow, teach them to trust themselves. If they come home and say, I don't know what to do. I don't know who to eat lunch with. I don't know how to hang out with. There's, this group of kids and there's this group of kids and I don't know. Help them figure it out. Ask them the right questions. Well, with whom do you feel the freest to express yourself? With whom do you feel the most accepted, the most loved? With whom do you feel like you have to be someone different? You'll help them figure it out on their own. When they need to choose in school what to study, don't tell them. Don't make it based on your agenda. Help them figure it out. What they're interested in, what their skills are, what things excite them. Teach them to trust that inner voice. Otherwise, we end up with kids who don't trust themselves and are constantly looking to others for approval. And that becomes the dilemma. So help them trust themselves. Open that inner ear for them to hear God speaking to them. Create a family meditation time. Help them understand. Just be quiet. Ask God a question and then let God speak to you. You'll be amazed what comes through these kids. Listen to them. When kids speak, a lot of times we constantly interrupt. They start saying things and we're like, yeah, anyway. Because we think they're just babbling. Listen to them. Acknowledge them, honor them, see them. Allow them to feel that sense of yeah. And then they'll know the right way to walk. They'll find it in themselves. Beautiful. Have a beautiful rest of your evening. A beautiful morning and day for those who are joining us from all over the world. We will not have satsang tomorrow. I have to be up in Dehradun tomorrow in the evening, but we will again from day after tomorrow, from 31st. So have a beautiful 2 days. Those of you joining us online, don't worry, they will stream something fun and inspiring during this time anyway. And I look forward to seeing you all day after tomorrow. Have a beautiful, beautiful evening.